Awesome. So, dude, so happy to have you here, man.
Great to be here.
I know we've been talking about doing this for a while, and
Finally.
I'm really excited to have you in here because, as far as I go, I use your material all the time. So I figure out, for those of you who don't know, Noah is the founder of Urbandigs, one of the leading websites in New York City as it relates to data. I've known Noah for many years. I was probably one of the first people to sign up for your website, and I think it's just getting bigger and bigger. So before we kind of get into everything, I want you to introduce yourself to our audience and kind of tell people how you got into real estate and how this transition happened from being a broker to being one of the leaders in real estate data in New York City.
Cool. It's a good story, actually. So right out of college, I actually became an equities trader. So this was 1998. So I started with a company called Tradescape, and I've always been looking at the markets. I always look at the stock market. I look at the real estate market. It's all a trade. It's about the bid, about the ask, about the spread in between, and everything that's going on. And after my trading career was over, I got into real estate. And what's interesting is I registered urbandigs.com domain before I even got my real estate license.
Okay.
So this is back in 2004, and late 2004, early 2005. Urbandigs was supposed to be StreetEasy. That's what's so funny about this whole thing. So StreetEasy didn't exist until 2006, and I was looking at the real estate market saying, how is the New York Times the de facto MLS or search site, and it could be just a much more transparent and better way. So I did some feasibility studies and tried to figure out if I could get the data and how much it would cost, and it didn't take me long to realize that I would need millions and millions of dollars to do this, and I wasn't in a position to do that. So instead, I decided to take my trading knowledge and my knowledge of macro and microeconomics on the markets and translate that into real estate. But I didn't have any real estate experience. So what I did is I made Urbandigs a blog, and I started talking about it from a macro perspective, if you remember back then in 2005. And that's when I joined City Habitats. And I was brought in by Gordon Golub, who is now an executive at Compass. And it was funny. I always talk about this when I see Gordon, and Gordon's like, he's looking at my resume, and he's like, what is somebody like you doing in the rental market? What are you doing here? And I'm like, well, I want to build a price model for Manhattan real estate because I already started thinking about it. And he just laughed, and he said, all right, we'll take you on and see what happens. But it didn't take long for me to realize that there's a lot of pain points in the Manhattan real estate market from an agent's perspective. Anytime any client would ask me, what's the market doing? We didn't have any tools to answer those questions. Anytime anyone asked me, what is something worth, right? There was no tools to figure that out. How long do I expect to be on the market before getting a contract, like days on market? There was no measure of any of these things. So ranging from neighborhood reports to real-time charts to comps to CMA reports and price models, all that stuff is what I aim to solve with Urbandigs. Now, the problem...
well, let me just stop you for one second. So, what I always felt was a problem is that the market lags. And there was no... So I saw reports. I mean, Corcoran's obviously had reports for many years, and Douglas Elliman too, and Jonathan
Quarterly
Miller.
sales report.
Yeah, they do those.
Yeah.
And when I was looking at those reports, I was always extremely frustrated with looking at them and saying, well, okay, these aren't accounting for what's happening now. And everything is just lagging from, and we've talked about this before on the phone, and you're like, Brian, sometimes the market's lagging 6 months.
Yeah.
And on your website, and whenever I'm sending this out to customers of mine, I'm making sure they understand these are real-time numbers. So talk a little bit about that on your site, how your site differentiates from pretty much anything else that I've seen out there in terms of giving people what's happening now.
Okay, so the first thing we had to do is fix the data problem. You couldn't build the real-time listing chart system without fixing the data problem. That's where I ran into the problem. That's where I was going with the whole but before. I started to take the RLS and just put the charts up, and I realized all these weird things. And as I started investigating and parsing out all these things, I realized there's a lot of data integrity issues with the RLS as well as with Acris, and I started fixing those for the sole purpose of creating those charts. Fast forward 4 years, because that's how long it took me to actually properly fix all the data problems. There's a difference between real time and lagging sales. The lagging part that you talk about is with all sales-based data. So let's just go over why that is. If something gets put into contract today, it takes 2 to 3 months to close, and then when it closes and you get your commission check and your client gets the keys, it takes another 3 weeks to 3 months for the accuracy city register to publicly file that recorded sale. So when that recorded sale finally gets public record, it's a representation of what actually was signed into contract, usually about 5 to 7 months prior.
Right.
Okay,
Which is a major problem.
Which is a problem. So I mean, but there's nothing you can do about it. Now you could try to look at the sales data early on, but if you understand that lag with the ACRIS filing, I'll give an example. If 1,000 places closed today, and 1,000 agents got their commission checks and people got their keys, etc., 1,000 places closed today. In about 3 weeks, I would say 400 to 500 of them will be filed in public record. In about 8 weeks, after 2 months, you're probably up to about 850, 85% of that, 800 to 850. And you wait 3 months, you're probably up to about 95%. You probably get 950 of the 1,000. So what does that tell you? That tells you that if you report stats on the current month, so we're in August right now, we're at the end of August. Why don't I show July stats? Well, quite frankly, they're incomplete. And if I show you a number that's incomplete right now, that's 60% complete, that number will change once it's complete. So if I show you a price per square foot number in July for $12.50, and then in August when we actually had enough files come in to make it more complete, and now it's at $11.75, and it changes, you're going to say, why did I just send this to my client with a false representation that led to a bad decision?
Sure.
And so Urbandigs was designed from the ground up to accommodate for that delay. So all of our sales charts are set to a 2-month delay right now. Okay. Meaning we show May, and when September comes up, we'll show June. Right. Okay, with July and August in 2 months. Now the real-time stuff, how do you track real-time? The real-time stuff is a full function of RLS. So when you get a new listing and you put it in the market, it's going into the RLS, and the RLS is spitting it out to the vendors, and the vendors are spitting it out to all the agents across the New York City market. That is a real-time piece of information. So I could track supply, I could track pending sales, which is when you change from active to contract signed. I could track off-market, and I could also track days on market. So those are the only 4 statistics that are actually real-time statistics. It's supply, pending sales, which is demand, supply and demand, days on market, and off-market. Off-market's one of those unrecognized little statistics, but it's quite telling, because if the market is strong, off-market is low.
Right.
If the market's weak, off-market pops and goes higher. So if you just try to think about this for a moment, I'm trying to look at data and understand the market with the hopes of explaining to my clients what's going on. If the market is weak, sellers aren't selling. They're not getting their bids. What are they going to do? They're going to take their listing off the market, right? And if the market's strong, they're not taking their listing off the market. They're putting it into contract. So off-market's one of those little indicators that people usually don't like to look at. Maybe for lead generation they'll look at it, but from an analytical point of view to figure out what's going on, it's that missing piece. You got supply levels, you got contract activity levels, and then you have off-market. And off-market happens to be quite high right now.
So when you're talking about that, talk a little bit about resupply. So a lot of my customers don't understand resupply and exactly what that means, and we've seen this resupply numbers skyrocket over the last few months.
A lot of agents don't understand what that is.
I know. So we try to explain to our customers in our emails, we try to explain what that is. So tell our audience what resupply means and why it's so important.
Okay, so I'm going to give a plug to my boy Yuval Greenblatt at Element, who is a sales manager at their main office, their Midtown office. Yuval is a good friend of mine. He's also a big analytics guy like you are. And Yuval came to me about 3 years ago and he said, Noah, you have no resupply. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? So he says, well, you know how many listings came on in the month. You know how many listings went into contract a month. What's the difference between the two? I mean, if the market's producing 200 units in this sector of the market and it's putting into contract 300 units in that sector, well, that's very different if we're producing 200 units and we're only putting in 50.
Right.
So that's what he calls resupply. It's literally the difference between monthly new listing activity and monthly contract activity. It doesn't take into account the off-market. We actually didn't put that element in there. We probably should, but we didn't. So resupply is simply telling you how much stuff is on the market when you exclude the contract activity for that period of time. the point is, the higher the number, the weaker the market. It could be negative. You could have 200 units that came on that month and 300 went to contract. The resupply would be minus 100. Anything that's low or negative is a very strong number. It's very seasonal. So you're going to probably see negative numbers in December, you know, maybe in August. And you think like those are the weakest months. But you talk, how is the strongest number in the weakest months? And the answer is, well, that's when no supply is coming.
Right.
Who's putting their listing on in December?
Right.
Yeah. So it's just another complementary indicator to kind of fill in the pieces and validate what's going on. See, Manhattan is one of those markets where it's highly fragmented, right? What's going on in the Upper East Side co-op market is very different than the Tribeca condo market. But take it a step further, it's price point specific now. So what's going on in the 2 to 5 million sector is very different than the 2 million under sector.
And that's, by the way, I'm sorry again to interrupt, but this is important. That's what's so great about Noah's site is that he breaks it all down by price point, by neighborhood, by bedroom, by everything.
Condo co-op, new development.
Right, it's a dynamic system, and we built it. That chart room, by the way, is why I'm bald right now. Just to let you know. I mean, I had to do.
Well, that chart room allows us to speak with more
Right.
confidence in the market, so I think it's a good trade-off.
That has prevented my grays from
Yes, that's why you have such great hair
yes,
right here.
Yes, but it's preventing more. Well, they're not as coming as fast and furious as they were maybe 3 years ago when I didn't have that.
It makes your job easier.
So thank you
Thank you
for
for the
allowing me to
sacrifice.
keep my black hair.
Yes,
Well,
and I'm still hairless over here.
We are diving into some great stuff. I just want to just let everyone know, if you're enjoying it, can you put into the comments a little thumbs up? And if you can hear us well, just let us know in the comments. Just give us another thumbs up. We have a lot of people in there right now. We have 22 people,
Nice.
which is our most ever. So that means everyone is enjoying
that's
what
great.
you're saying.
True
It's great.
celebrity.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, what are the most meaningful metrics in your opinion?
Yeah,
Sure. Well, first off, I'll tell you, sellers only care about two things. All right, they care about price trends, and they care about time. How long is things going to take? How much am I going to get? How long is it going to take me to get?
Sure.
So in that vein,
Yeah.
I like to look at price per square foot, which is your linear price action metric. Meaning, I don't like to look at median sales price. Median sales price is more of a function of what types of properties close and when. And I'll give you an example. Let's say 1 month you have more one bedrooms and studios that closed, and then the next month you have 3 bedrooms, a couple new developments, and you have some townhouses that closed. You're going to see very volatile month-to-month moves, and it's going to say up 6%, down 6% month-to-month. Whereas price per square foot kind of smooths that out on a linear basis. So price per square foot for price action, which is showing us down, rightly. And then I would look at 2 other charts. Days on market.
Well, I'm sorry, can I stop you real quick on this? So a lot of people ask me this all the time, and it's in regards to co-ops and price per square foot. So how is that a tough thing for you to get? I mean, for those of you who don't know, price per square foot is a metric a lot of people use, as Noah's been speaking about. But with co-ops, there's no recorded square footage by the Attorney General. So how do we get those square footages? They're based on estimates. So it's tough.
We take their word on it?
I will tell you. Well, I'll tell you that. First off, the chart system allows you to separate condo and co-op. So you could actually just do condo, which I would recommend. If you're doing price per square foot, actually click that condo button. And
stick
just
to condos.
stick to the accurate number. And even if you have a co-op, you have to understand you're just trying to get some price action.
But in that case, wouldn't it be so? What I do, and it's interesting for you to hear you say this. What I do is when I'm researching the co-ops, I stay away from the price per square foot, and I do use the median sales price.
That's okay. It might be volatile. You have to understand when you go see the system.
And I take the townhouses out of it.
Right, that's good. When the system allows you to get granular, right? The system lets you go into that Kips Bay market or Turtle Bay, whatever you want to go into. 1 to 2 million co-op 2-bed.
Yorkville, Lenox Hill, it really breaks it down.
It breaks it down, but the side effect of that is sample size, right? If you get into a market that this has 3 things that closed and 4 things, the median sale price might be very, very bouncy, and you're going to look at it and be like, this is useless to me, it's a bad system, and my answer back to you is going to be, if a pharmaceutical company is trying to come up with a new drug, right, and they go to the FDA and they say, this is our new drug, we'd like to pass it, and the FDA comes back and says, how many people were in your case study, and you say 4, they're going to be like, what, are you kidding me?
And that
was great. That was great.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It completely makes sense.
Anytime I see the sample size is small, I don't even bother sending it out.
And that's why we actually put the sample size. If you hover over the bars, it'll
Yeah.
tell you what the count is. And we did that
It is good.
specifically for that. So if you have it in a low, it should be at least 15, 20, maybe even more per month, at least in there to get some type of nice smooth average out of it. But you got to be careful. For co-ops, I mean, look, when there's no data, there is no data. And what I find is that most firms have gotten into the habit of stopping agents putting in any size for co-ops. But there still are agents that do it. So if you take all
Or do it that don't.
if you look at all of them, I would say maybe 40 or 50% of them have size and 50 or 60% of them don't. I mean, I didn't check this, but like just off the back of my head, it would be somewhere in that range. A lot of co-ops don't have the size there for that exact reason.
I thought it was more like 60-40 that they're putting it there.
I'd be curious to actually do a little query on
Yeah.
that and check it.
Next up,
Next
assignment.
time. Yeah.
Next episode.
Just may
Yeah.
lose your facial hair.
That's not going anywhere. But no, the other two charts is a lot of sellers now are not understanding that the market shifted. So again,
Yeah.
when you say the best charts
Right.
to use, you get the price per square foot, you get the days on market. Those two things.
And for sure, now to flip on for the buyers are wondering, okay, it's a buyer's market now. How much leverage, how much negotiation power do I have?
It's specific to the actual listing they're about to bid on and
Sure.
where that listing is priced.
Right, but the most meaningful metrics for buyers that you, in your opinion,
For buyers, I mean,
is it still days on market?
well, it's buyers. They care about supply. See, like what I find when I think about buyers is when I was still transacting 3-4 years ago. This is the golden years, 2013, 14, 15. Buyers were complaining about three things: I got no options.
Yeah.
I have no negotiability, and I have to bid over ask to get a deal done, and I have to lose concessions, right?
Yep.
So now they have options.
Yep.
They have negotiability. So supply shows the options, and listing discount shows the negotiability. That was the other chart I was going to mention.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
listing discount
Good
chart,
point, yeah.
which is basically saying how much are sellers going down to get a deal done.
Right.
Right. Those two charts are in their favor. I guess the only way to use these charts for buyers is if you have that kind of a buyer that is just on the fence. And when buyers bid based on confidence.
Yeah.
They bid based on clarity, right? They do not want to bid into markets that they don't know what's going on. They don't know if it's going to go down more. They don't like to buy a depreciating asset. And they're uncertain what their monthly expenses might be going forward.
Yeah.
Segue that into the whole SALT deductions and all these tax policy changes and the interest rates popping up a little bit. All that stuff is just adding a little bit of uncertainty. So it's just a cloudy picture. And again, buyers don't tend to bid when it's a cloudy picture. Their confidence goes down, and when that happens, they bid less aggressively or they just go on the sidelines and they wait. The problem with New York real estate is you kind of, if you're going to get a good deal, you need to do it when there's blood on the streets. So I'm a very contrarian kind of guy. I like to bid when there's a good product that's down and out. And I'm very bullish on the market. I've been very bullish for the last couple of months. I think buyers have a very unique combination of variables right now that they haven't seen in 5 years. And that is they have supply options, and it's starting to dwindle, by the way.
Yeah, I saw it major.
It's-
I saw we went up to 7,500, and
Yeah.
now we're down to, I saw today, 58.
58, that's a lot of seasonality kind of things, all right? So that's starting to come down just a little bit. We were peaking out, now we're going down a little bit. And they want negotiability. So, and they have all of that right now. And there's no, I mean, they're not bidding over ask. There's not, very, very rarely are you finding those places priced perfectly and they got the right features and they're bringing in 40 people in the first open house and they have 7 bids the first. That's very rare.
And
right
it's,
now.
you're with the Morgan Manhattan team, and we did that recently on 21st Street, one open house, 10 bids the next day. So
And you price it perfectly. So it's all about pricing.
yeah,
You know,
it really
100%.
but
very
some
good.
sellers don't, you know, they
What
want
do
to
you, what do you say to the seller that says, I want to price high because I want to entertain low bids?
Right.
I don't want, what do you say to that person?
So we actually have a chart. So Clelia Peters, let me give a little plug to Clelia Peters.
There's a chart for that.
CEO of Warburg Realty.
It's a chart for it.
She asked me a long time ago, she's like, I need something so that my agents can go to sellers and say there is a relationship between pricing correctly, selling quickly, and getting closer to your asking price. So I started thinking about this. If you scroll all the way down to my chart room, I have something that's called discount to days on market. It's basically comparing listing discount, which is, again, how much do sellers have to go down to get a deal done, and days on market. So what do? So we basically take all the closed sales that we have listing information for, and we put it into a bucket based on how many days it took that listing to sell. Was it 0 to 30 days to sell? Was it 31 to 60 days, 61 to 90, 90 to 120, and 120 plus?
Mm-hmm.
And then in each of those buckets, we looked at the listing discount median. And what we found was all of those listings that sold from 0 to 30 days and sold quickly got close to 98, 99% of their asking price or even over their asking price. And as the days on market got longer, the listing discount got larger as well. So what does that mean? That basically means there is a correlation between pricing correctly, selling quickly, and getting the highest sales to list ratio. Now, how does that help you? I mean, you have to look at your active competition. You know, I'm going to give another plug to Donna Olshan right now. I'm plugging all these people. Donna Olshan's the luxury 4 million plus. She's a goddess. She's brilliant, and I've had the luck to actually talk to her a couple of times in the last few months on these podcasts.
Their reports are really informative.
It's great, and she's consistent with it, and it's become like a staple. And she has an expression. It's not how fast you are. If you're an Olympic swimmer in an Olympic swimming pool, it's not how fast of a swimmer you are. It's how fast the people that you're competing in the same pool are, right? And the point is, the analogy is, it's not about how you're priced. It's about how you're priced relative to the 10 other properties in the sector of the market you're selling. If you're looking at a Classic 6 in the Upper East Side, are you priced better or worse than the 15 other Classic 6s?
Yes.
And if you might be priced correctly for your building. So like you might actually go into your building and say, all right, well this Classic 6 was exactly the same as mine, sold 6 months ago, it's pretty clear what I got to price it at. But if the active competition is 10% lower than you, and the features don't support it, what do you think a buyer is going to look at for value? So it's something. It's one of those tricky types of things. You got to take into account multiple points.
Yeah, it really takes into our latest video that's going to come out. It's like you put in there, if it's not compelling, it's not selling. So when people are looking at that, they're looking at, well, I've got 19 options. Why am I going for this one?
And the fact of the matter is that if something is not selling, it's one of three things. It's either a market problem, which we partially have. It's either a product problem, which is a ground floor, low floor, back of the building, unrenovated, dark unit. Those are just great sales. Or it's a price problem. And most of the time, it's a price problem. Now, lucky for you, I mean, in the first 4 weeks, you should be able to know right off the bat how your price is. Right? Yep. And another good thing to really do is to actually take a look at the sector and look at what you're competing against and do a price reduction search. We actually launched this on Urbandigs, so you can go into our search and say price reduced within the last 2 months and look in your sector and you'll see, oh my God, out of 20 apartments that we're competing against, 16 of them have lowered their price in the last 2 months. All of a sudden, it's not this taboo thing. And sellers will actually become a little easier to understand, all right, this is actually something I gotta do.
Can you still search price reduction based off, say, one bedroom co-ops? And
yes,
say,
you can do so. We have a filter saying price reduced by timeline in our new search. Urbandigs just launched a brand new search, advanced search with all these different features. It's fantastic. It lets you do active, contract signed, off market, and closed. And there's different ways to use it based on the different conversation that you need to have with your client. One of the ways is a price reduction conversation, right? Agents have to learn how to use data to have a conversation to expedite their transaction. So what do I mean by that is, again, if you have a seller that's not selling, do a search in that subsector of the market to see what you're competing against and do the price reduced in the last 3 months. And you might see 15, 20 apartments.
Let the data do the talking.
And let the data do the talking and show your seller, hey, this is all the listings that we're competing against these guys. This guy had to come down 6%, this guy came down 4%, and you can just export an Excel file that shows all this stuff. It's a matter of how you use the data to have a chat with your client.
Do you think it's different in New York City versus the suburbs in terms of pricing?
Yes. It's the suburbs are not a vertical market. New York is a vertical market. So right then and there's a different set of rules that govern how you should price. It's a great question. So I talk about this all the time because we have pricing tools. So I go on these classes and I have to teach this stuff. And what I like to teach is that in a vertical market like Manhattan, every building is its own local marketplace. But you got to price in the building, you got to look at the comps. If there's no comps in the building, you have to go out. So it's a combination of looking in the building and looking at your active competition, and there's got to be some middle way in between the two. You got to hope that active competition is not too much of a gap when compared to your building trades. But you really should start with the building, because once you get out of that building and you start looking at a listing in another building, there's at least a dozen variables between those two buildings that we don't know how to justify for, like facade, amenity set, service level, finances, right? The monthly expenses, the configurations, the views. These are all differences that every building has. And even though they're 2 blocks or two buildings next to each other,
make huge difference.
A buyer will see the difference. So that's why when you step out of a building and you look at other buildings, it's not really an apples to apples comparison. It's more like an apples to oranges comparison. So to bypass that, you do two approaches. You do, here's the building analysis with the comps in the building, and this is the price conclusion I come. And here's the active competition of everything that we're competing against, and here's the price conclusion I come. And let's talk about both.
Yeah.
Everything that we can do.
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah.
Well, you guys are established producing agents and using the best technology.
Absolutely.
Yes. Does anybody have any
Yeah,
questions?
so-
No, I'm talking about any of our audience. Did anybody?
Dude,
I have a whole bunch
Yeah,
more.
right. I could just
Look, just a lot of great feedback saying great
If anybody has
job,
questions
guys.
for Noah, I have a lot more questions I want to ask, and I know Andrew does too. But if you do have questions, please
Absolutely. If
ask.
there's
and
a
we'll-
neighborhood that's very specific to you, throw that in there. We may not get to it now, but we'll come back to it later. If not, we're going to keep carrying on. There's 15 people in here. If you're liking it, give us another thumbs up. That'll be great.
Lots of thumbs up.
There's a
Lots
lot of thumbs up. A
Yeah,
lot of thumbs
Never
up.
gotten so many thumbs up in my life.
Cool. A heart emoji might be good just to change it up a little bit. Like, thank you. Keep going. Andrew, what do you got?
Yeah, so just general from the market screen. Inventory's up about 17%, give or take. Median sales price is down around 4.5%. And this may tie into the point you mentioned earlier about why median sales price is not the best metric to use. But just given those two metrics, I mean, in your personal opinion, do you think the market has more room to come down, or do you kind of see, I know you did mention you're bullish on the market, but do you think it's kind of leveling off already?
Okay, so I'm bullish on the real-time field market,
Okay.
meaning the dynamics that are at play in the field right now. In my opinion, the leverage pendulum has shifted to the buy side, especially in the higher price points.
Yep.
It's starting to turn around in the higher price points. Now you have to understand where we came from. Okay, we came from 2014, late 2014, and into mid 2015 was basically the peak of this last cycle. The difference is the price point you're in. The 10 million plus super luxury sector kind of fell off a cliff in late 2014. It started with the high price points, right? That sector is starting to, it's already normalized, it's already kind of balanced itself out, it's been lugging on the bottom for a period of time, and it's starting to come back. Same thing with the 2 to 5 million sector, it's starting to come back. Meanwhile, the lower price points held on for the longest time, right?
Yeah.
Like it peaked in mid 2015, but it didn't go down much. If you
It
were
was
under
even strong last year.
Exactly.
We had a very strong spring
until
last
about
year.
last year, right? So I would say like fall of last year is
Yeah.
kind of when
Then
that
started
sector
to dip, yeah.
started to get impacted, and that sector is now kind of like where the high end was a year ago, right? So the high end was hit first, coming back first. The low end got hit last, coming back last. So the sales data, now there's multiple questions here.
Yeah.
I'm bullish on the real-time in the field dynamics because I think those dynamics are favoring the buyers right now. And if I was a buyer right now, how do I look at the market? The hit already happened. When I look macro, I don't see any equity market collapse. I see some geopolitical stuff going on. I don't see any major credit crises indicators going on. Like when 2007 happened, in 2008 and 2009 credit crisis, there was clear signs in the credit markets. Now I'm not talking the mortgage markets. I'm talking credit spreads, the high yield bond market. I'm talking LIBOR, TED, all these things that an equity trader would look at, right? To look at the credit market. And in those macro markets, credit leads equity. Equities follow credit, right? So the credit market was just getting destroyed. It was clear as day, but the stock market was high. And it's like one of them is wrong. Usually it's the stock market, and in 2008, 2009 came out, and you saw what happened, right? So I look at it today, and it's like, is there any underlying craziness going on here? And the answer is no. Like fundamentally, I don't see any major reason to be short the tradable markets other than the fact that, oh my God, the stock market just keeps going up, it hasn't gone down. So I'm just bearish on it, you know? But I find a lot of people weren't in the whole ride up. So I'm bullish on the real time because fundamentally speaking, I don't see anything crazy. And the hit already happened, and the options are there, and the negotiability is there, and you could probably get a further discount. Now, does that mean that the next couple of months or quarters is gonna show positive sales growth? No. So, right, so that pipeline, right? I still think that there's some negative sales in that pipeline that hasn't filtered
Digested
through,
yet.
hasn't gone through yet. So it's very possible you have 1 or 2 more quarters of bad numbers relative to a year ago. It's always a year ago, right? Because it's a seasonal marketplace, right? We have an active season, we have a slow summer, we have an after Labor Day pickup, after Thanksgiving slowdown, and then it all starts over again, right? So you got to look year over year to factor out that seasonality, and at some point we're going to be comparing versus the low point, and those numbers will turn. And if by that time supply is even lower, then you just missed it, and you didn't even know what happened, and you missed it. And you're going to look out there and be like, wow, it's not as buyer friendly as it was. So again, you got to kind of buy when there is that blood on the streets, when sellers are just going down to hit that bid. Is the time you got to buy. You got to take a little bit of a risk, but you try to price it in. I happen to think that we're almost fully priced in. Like, I think the discount that we came down is priced in the negative forces that caused the slowdown to begin with.
Yeah.
So I'm bullish longer term in the market. Manhattan is not one of those kind of markets that just it doesn't constantly go down. You know what I'm saying? It tends to react quick. This slowdown was very different in that it was a price point specific slowdown. The higher price points got hit much more severely than the lower price points. But the biggest thing with the slowdown is the duration of it. This slowdown has been 2 years now. Yeah. And that's, I mean, even the credit crisis, like, we fell sharp.
Hard.
And then with a couple of months, it was really bad, but then we started a progressive comeback right away. And a year after, you could see where, like, we almost kind of made up that sharp dive. And then it took us a couple of years to get back to where we were. But it was a clear turnaround. The last 2-3 years has not been the best. It's been a fall down and just stay down there, kind of thing.
Well, this year different from 2016 in that there was a lot more supply.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 2017, there's a lot more supply this year
Right.
than we saw last year. Like, we never got up to over. I think in 2017 the probably high was, you know, maybe 6,000 apartments, where we went up to mid sevens.
Right. So the supply is starting to come down a little bit, and this is also the time of year when supply does come down a little bit. So
off the
I
market,
have a strange feeling that when we look at October, after Labor Day, give it a month. At first the stuff comes on, then the contracts get signed, right? Sure. So there's a wave. There'll be a supply wave, and then there'll be a contract sign wave, right?
We have a bunch of listings we've taken off. I've got a couple of you to come on. Yep. We're all waiting for after Labor Day.
Right. And that's pretty much what the market does.
Exactly. So we'll see what happens. We do have a comment that I don't want to get missed. It's from Gregory Todd. He goes, I am bullish on this guy. He's like the Michael Phelps of real estate. Solid gold.
It's the aerodynamic bald head that lets me weave through.
Great comments like this will not be missed. So thank you, Gregory. Keep those coming in.
Thank you, Gregory.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's awesome.
When you talk about, you know, obviously I think a major impact in keeping a lot of this inventory on, you had spoken about this before, the salt. Do you think that was instrumental in, you know, in keeping this 2-year market, you know, bearish market, keep going? Like, if that doesn't happen, does this happen, do you think? Do you think they're related?
Probably. It's hard to justify it, but it's probably related. You know what I'm saying?
Like, not that it's changing, but people are just taking it in.
It's everyone's digesting how this affects me, and that period doesn't take 30 days, right? And they're just, again, it's uncertainty of what are my taxes going to be? What is my after deduction expense going to be now? At the very end of the day, all those forces has made things less affordable for buyers. Okay, whether it's the geopolitical situation or whether it's the market's down makes it less cloudy. Buyers don't like when the market's down. Buyers would rather bid when the market's at peak levels, there's no options, and there's 20 people, there's no urgency, right? We're a animalistic kind of human nature. Our nature's animalistic, right? And if you go to an open house and there's 35 people there, and you go to an open house there's no one there or one person there, how are you going to act in that different scenario, right? And when the market was euphoric and even the buyers hated it, the fact that 30 people were at the open house, and if you didn't bid the next 2 days, you're going to lose it.
Made them feel good about overbidding.
Now, but they're like, all right, well, I'm bidding on an apartment that if I sell, there'll be 30 people coming in because it's obviously got something that's really good about it, or the price is really good, but there's that animalistic sense of urgency that just does not exist right now, and it's at that low point. And I think it's going to start bouncing the other way. It didn't happen yet, but I think it's going to start bouncing the other way. And I think by next year, I think you're going to look back at this year and say, like, I kind of wish I pulled the trigger this year. You know? It might take a year for the sales numbers to actually reflect and show it, But again, I think I'm bullish on the market because I think the hit already happened. Even though the reports are still showing it, we've all been in the field and we know that this has been 2 years, 3 years now. The hit's already happened and buyers got something that they haven't had in years. That I haven't seen it. I mean, I haven't seen this since 2011, 2012.
I remember in 2000, well, really it was 2010 or 9, where it was silent.
Right, and that was the best time to buy.
Right, I didn't see, it didn't even crash that hard. I mean, the Dow was getting cut in half, and you had deals like, maybe in a co-op you were getting 25% off, but, in the condo market maybe it was like 10.
It took a little while for the condo market to get hit. I mean, I was renting some classic 6s that were going at 30% discount, like classic 6s on Park Avenue with views were literally trading at 30% discount because those are the people, if they were in the know at that time, anyone that connected to a financial person on Wall Street or a bond trader on Wall Street at that time in 2008 probably thought the world was going to end. Because if you were in that sector of the market, it was so scary. And you're just looking at the world being like, nobody knows what's about to happen.
I remember 6 months later we went by, I didn't do one deal. Everyone was
in
terrified.
hindsight, was that not the best time to put a bid in?
Well, it's
I mean, that's the hardest part, right? Hindsight's 20/20, right? When you look back at it, right? But again, 2009, blood was on the streets. The market was down. Sellers were desperate. Nobody was bidding. It was completely quiet. You could bid 10%, 15% under, no hitting that bid, and it was the best. In hindsight, it was the best time to take advantage of Manhattan real estate.
Yeah, you see it all the time when, like, even in, like, it goes with stuff like people want to jump on the trending train and they buy it at the top and then it gets that dip and no one wants to get in on it when it
How
dips,
much lower is it going to go?
Which is the best time to get on
Nobody
it.
wants to catch a falling knife.
Yeah.
Is that old expression,
There you
right?
go.
Because they think the market's falling.
Yeah.
And all right, well, if it's down 10% now, it might be down 10% next year. I'll just
Exactly.
wait.
Right,
and catch it.
exactly.
And again,
Sounds
there was
very familiar.
reasons, but there was
Too familiar.
exactly. There was reasons why we got hit that hard in 2009.
Yeah.
You look at the market today, and it's just like the only reason is the stock market can't go up forever.
Yeah.
Something
Right.
with Trump's going to happen. I don't know how that's going to affect the markets. A little uncertain.
Well, what about how do you feel about like other neighborhoods getting popular, like Brooklyn, exploding over the last few years?
People, looks like you're buying an apartment tomorrow. Julie's like, let's buy now.
Well, a nice plug to you guys at Urbandigs. Now you do have Brooklyn data.
We have Brooklyn data. We don't have the Brooklyn MLS, which I was a little upset about. They had a decision a couple months ago. Apparently, there was like 7 or 8 companies looking to get that data, and they rejected every one. I don't get it. I don't know why they would do that unless there's some force going on that's saying don't share your data with anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
But so we have RLS data. So in this messed up MLS universe that New York City data is, right now the Brooklyn MLS is not sharing with the RLS. So I have only the RLS, which is about, I don't know, 50, 60% of Brooklyn maybe. It's getting higher. But at the end of the day, there really needs to be a merger of Brooklyn.
Is it higher in certain neighborhoods than others?
It is. I haven't looked at it yet, but there's a concentration in one sector of Brooklyn for RLS, and then the Brooklyn MLS is a different sector of the concentration. My partner John is handling that whole department, so I wish he was here to really chime in on that.
Is John also going bald?
No, he's just all gray.
That's an important thing. Is like, especially now with all these supply, people are willing to live in Brooklyn and Manhattan, and they're looking at both. So so combining the two would be great for us.
Yeah, and that's why I don't have listing charts for Brooklyn. I only have sales charts for Brooklyn because I don't want to show you supply and pending sales if I only have half the depth of the coverage. So it's something I hope will resolve itself over time, and they'll realize that it's actually better for our agents and their clients to actually get these listings out on as many sites as possible.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
Do you think people moving to these other neighborhoods is impacting the market now?
It's always going.
That's part
It's
of it.
always going.
But hasn't it happened in the last 5 years? Haven't we seen more of that?
Going to Brooklyn?
Going to Brooklyn, going to Queens, trying new
Like,
neighborhoods.
Brooklyn is kind of being the priority rather than, oh, hey, I'm looking in Brooklyn because I was priced out of Manhattan.
Right.
Yeah, and I think over the last 5 years, it's been a combination of priced out and new areas and hip areas, and the millennials love that kind of stuff. And I think their gap between Brooklyn and Manhattan definitely has narrowed over the last 5 years. I mean, if you compare 5-6 years ago, it's wide.
Yeah.
I don't know if they could see or not, but it's wide. And if you look at it now, it's probably something like this. If you looked at it in 2015, it got to the point where it was almost comparable at the peak of the market. And it's like Brooklyn's trading at a similar level to Manhattan. That's a great indicator, by the way, of the top of the market, by the way, when that kind of happens. And I think it's probably widened. That gap has probably widened now in the last 2 years with this slowdown. But I don't know if Brooklyn got hit as hard as Manhattan just because of the price point nature of the down cycle.
And also the carrying costs tend to be
lower.
I do speak with a pretty big agent out in Brooklyn, Scott Kleintein. And
you can shout out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Why
nice.
not? They help us with everything in Brooklyn, and they said that they felt like it slowed down a fair bit out there.
I saw a stat that the inventory in Brooklyn was close to where they were in 2008. Are you seeing that?
I don't know because I don't
more
track
junk.
inventory. I'm the bad person to ask about other sites because again, when I had hair, I sat there every single day for 4 years going over the status changes of all the RLS listings, and I identified hundreds of integrity issues that were causing listings to get counted as duplicates, or get counted as active when it was really in contract, or active when it's really off market, or active when it really sold. And there was genuine reasons that were causing this, and I was able to explain to my engineer to fuzzy logic code it. In this scenario do this, in this scenario do that. I was only able to do that because I was a broker, and I understood the RLS. So after going through that experience for 4 years, identifying all those messed up things that cause data problems, I don't look at anything other than Urbandigs. So it's killing me on Brooklyn because I just don't have that other half of the equation.
And we've had conversations about this over the years, like saying, well, why is this saying this and this saying that? And you're explaining to me how you're taking everything into account.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of other sources aren't necessarily doing that.
Yes, and there's a status flow algos that Urbandigs has that if an agent does something to try to sweep something in there or reset their days on market, like we won't get tricked by that.
Flags them.
We'll code it saying ignore that kind of thing. So we have protections in there against that kind of thing.
So Noah's website once again is urbandigs.com.
The true Michael Phelps had real estate
I think
data.
that's your new tagline.
I think it's my new tagline.
True American hero.
We have to be using that. We did the office just through their sales meeting recently, like just this morning, and they're using your charts.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Fantastic resource.
Anything that helps age. I mean, the thing about it is it saves you time, right? I mean, if you didn't have this stuff,
But also clarity. Because
clarity.
we do have Miller Samuels, but that lags more heavily.
Then we have the city habitats corporate.
We have the quarterly reports, but still kind of supply in the median sales price, the price per square foot, like right now.
And do you find that your clients get more comfortable when they're presented? So that's the thing I was trying to explain to agents is that when people are not confident and they're just confused and they don't want to put a bid in or they're not sure they want to sell, you give them charts, you give them building sales, you do a CMA on our search tool for active and contract of what they're competing against. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, I have clarity now and I have some transparency now of what's going on, and it tends to comfort them. And comforted clients tend to have more confidence and they'll transact. Whereas any client that's just not confident, not comfortable, I wouldn't put my time in.
Completely makes sense, especially at where the median sales price is in the city.
And it makes sense. I mean, would you buy something if you ask that agent how's the market doing, and they come back and say I have no idea.
Right.
I mean, or how long does it take to sell? I have no idea.
Right. On to the next one.
What's this price? Is it good?
There's a few questions we have. We were just looking at Flatiron yesterday. It looks like it's a good market to be selling in. There's not a lot of inventory going on there, but you look at a different market and they're a little saturated. So
yeah, I mean,
it depends.
The Upper West Side the co-op market. Donna, I was talking to Donna about this. One contract. It's probably updated since this was like 4 days ago. But one listing went into contract since June. One in the 4 million plus sector in the co-op space in the Upper West Side. One since June. It's probably like up to 2 or 3 now. But it just goes to show you, the Upper East Side was like 35.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's the Q train.
No, but a lot of the pre-war stuff is closer to the park, and I've seen more luxury inventory in the pre-war buildings on the Upper East Side move than I have recently.
See, that's the thing. I mean, it's hard to we could sit here and try to quantify and justify why that's all happening all day long, and you probably maybe that does have something to do with it, but it just.
I think people are more willing to absorb inventory that's further east now than they were before.
Oh, that's
and there's a
definitely
lot of
true.
inventory
Yeah.
and there's a lot. Most of the inventory is east of Third.
Yeah.
You know, and once you get it, then there's a lot of inventory that's east of First.
Yeah.
And before, I think a lot of people didn't want to go near that, and I think now it's like, you know what? It's pretty good value.
Yeah.
Here, especially where I only have to walk 2 avenues instead of.
But it shows you how different. It just shows you how different those markets. I mean, the Upper East Side and the Upper West Side are pretty much like they go in line with the broader market. Those are like as close to stable as you're talking about. It's not a highly volatile area kind of thing. And whatever the Manhattan market trend is, those two markets are right around that area. But to see one side of it so low and this not fierce and there's no frenzy, and then the other side of it to see a pickup, it just shows you how fragmented this market is. So you really got to localize what's going on in that sector of that market. It's not just price point; it's also property type, it's also bed count, and it's also neighborhood. So you got to take into account all that.
Yeah, all that
stuff.
stuff. And again, I said it before, I'll say it again, that's why your website is awesome. And I use it constantly. I send it to my clients all the time. I use it to figure out what apartments are worth. It's really an instrumental tool in how I determine, you know, what prices should be. So thank you for coming up with that. And I know you blood, sweat, and tears and hair, you know, making all of this happen. And you know, without it, I couldn't do my job as well as I do.
Thank you.
So
That's ultimately what the mission is to help agents do their job better and save you time and help you be more productive.
And Noah's always been great. You know, I email him, he gets right back to me. If there's a problem, he'll say, I'm talking about it with my developer, and it gets handled. If there's something,
Just so if more people want to email Noah,
Yeah.
give me the link.
We'll drop the email in the comments. Just go nuts. He'll get back to you. Apparently.
Yeah.
No, but I just want to say that I do appreciate that because you're one of my longest subscribers, and I've known you personally for a while now. And listen, I'm not claiming that everything's going to be 100% accurate. Anyone that says it's 100% accurate is just going to be lying to you straight to your face. The RLS and the accuracy, they have these problems in their data integrity issues that are out there, and you didn't get 300 bugs just at one time. It happens over time, and over time there might be something that pops up that didn't ever exist before. So when you email me and you find something like that, we take that as a very high priority.
and I think a lot of people, and this is why I love Noah so much. A lot of people, if I did that, they'd be like, "Oh no, and they like, you know, they skate around it and defend it. Noah's just like, "Let me look into it."
Yeah.
Like that's
It's
what
all
he's
about-
every
it's
time.
all
Let
about
me
the
look into
accuracy.
it. Let me find out, and he'll email me back. Oh, this is what was going wrong. This is what we're doing to fix it. Thank you for bringing it to my attention.
Well, also there's maybe a reason. It's not.
It's
sometimes
usually
it's not even
is a
something
good-
wrong. That
There's usually a very good
There's
reason.
usually a
There's a
very
reason.
good reason
Right.
for it, and Noah gets right on it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what happened. You
Exactly.
got to regen our charts. You just found a bug. Thank you very much. It's going to affect it 0.5%. And we make the charts better. Everyone else benefits from it. You know.
I do have a request
Uh-oh.
before we let you go, and that because it's something I miss on Urbandigs that is not happening as much, and that's
The blog. Yeah, I know. So I haven't had much time. So this project has taken it's been an insane journey, right? So I've been through engineering data. I've been through UI UX web design development. I've been through mobile app development, and I'm going into. I just launched a postcard marketing system. We have to get rentals on the site, right? Rentals need to come back on the site. That's all coming. Once I get rentals on the site and we get I don't know if anyone knows this, but we're actually going towards consumers. I'm not going to go to compete against StreetEasy, that's just silly, but we are building home valuation tools, we're building agent matching tools, and we're building lead gen connect to agent tools to get consumers on Urbandigs to connect with you guys. So that's what our next focus is on, and when that's done,
Next question. What's next?
right, and when that's done, I'm going to just try to make it my point to get back to blogging. I'm trying to figure out a format for it.
Once a quarter.
Once a quarter?
Give us.
Well,
once
I want to
quarter.
do something even like once a week.
No, but I mean, while you're inundated with all of these things, just
What in
give us
particular
once a
about
quarter.
blogs
I'll
are
try.
you missing?
No, I just think it really. What Noah would do is he'd really, kind of talk about the things he did on this podcast today, and he'd encapsulate that in a short blog.
Yeah.
And I think it was really informative.
It was
for a
great.
lot
Good
of-
perspective.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something, like that is what, I got all my clients from that, right? So I was transactional back in the day. That's how I funded Urbandigs. I basically took 80% of my revenue and just put it right to this technology company. But that's how I got all my clients, and it was I had an agent audience, I had a client audience, and I had even like a financial audience. People that weren't my clients, but they were just keeping track of the markets. And a lot of people are asking for the blog back, so it will come back. I just have to finish this vision with the company. It's been, again, I'm getting to the point where I think my CEO duties of Urbandigs are almost capped out. I'm not the guy to take the company to the next level, so we're about to make some amazing operational strategic decisions for the company going forward. But that's when my time is going to get different. Right now I'm wearing 10 different hats to cover this company. It's a pure startup, bootlegging startup, so it's tough.
Well, you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Okay.
We definitely owe you drinks.
Yeah.
Yes,
Bourbon.
I would love to drink bourbon.
Okay.
Bourbon's good.
Okay.
Well, Noah Rosenblatt from Urbandigs, we thank you for coming on. Hope you come back.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Anytime.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Take care.
Cool. That's fun.
Yeah, it's great.